What's up, everybody? It's Scott. I am truly honored to have my guest on today. I have Kwesi Millington. He is a speaker, he is an author, he is a certified wellness coach, he is a speaking coach. There is not much this man has not done. This video is going to be great. You're going to get a lot out of this. Kwesi, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated. And I'm doing well. I'm doing well, enjoying the heat as we go into summer. So
Good.
yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
I'm curious. You said heat. Now you're up in Canada. What's the heat considered?
Well, today is pretty warm. I mean, I know that you're down in the States, so I always have to do my conversion, right? So what are we, 35 times 2 plus 30? We're in the 90s today. So
Oh, wow. I
it's pretty
didn't know
hot
it could
down
get
here.
that hot up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, we get a couple of months
Okay.
of beautiful weather.
Good.
And we're heading right into it. So I love the heat, so it doesn't bother me. But I know a lot of people are staying in their air conditioned homes today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, a lot of my audience are law enforcement officers or those thinking about getting into law enforcement. You did work in law enforcement at one point. How long were you a police officer, and what unit were you with?
So yeah, I was a police officer for 12 years total. And I started in the west coast of Canada, so working out in British Columbia, which is on the west coast, just above Seattle, for those who don't know Canada that well. And then I did some policing in Ontario. I've done street work, so frontline uniform policing, going to calls, 24 hour, 24/7 shifts, those type of thing, those types of calls. And then I did plainclothes work. So plainclothes investigation, 9 to 5 work in commercial crime is where I was last placed. That was my last assignment, was commercial crime, going after financial criminals.
Which assignment, which location did you like the most?
Every location has its advantages. I mean, if your audience is law enforcement, when you get plainclothes unit, the hours typically tend to be better because you're not working as many night shifts unless you get called out to something. I mean, homicide's a different story altogether, but I worked, white collar crime. I got to go home and have dinner every night at 5 o'clock. So the timing of a plainclothes unit is the advantage there, but a part of me really loved being on the streets. In fact, that would be my favorite. I liked going to calls. I liked dealing with domestics. I liked every day is different. I liked not being in an office. There's no comparison for me. The time, the shift work was the only detractor. Working
Yes.
8 p.m. to 7 a.m. And rotating shifts, but outside of that, the work was so much better on the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of all the assignments I've had, patrol is definitely the best, but just like you, the schedule was a little too demanding. So I get that 100%. Now, in your career, there was an event that just made your career and life take a turn. So we'll get right to that. What can you give that story?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the Coles Notes version of the
There you go.
story, and it's probably people will probably relate to it more now than ever before.
Hmm.
But this was back in 2007 is when it first happened. You get called to deal with someone, and you get in a fight, physical altercation. So that's what happened to me. I used to work in Vancouver Airport. Call comes in, a man's throwing luggage, breaking windows, and we get up to the airport, and the damage had already been done at that time. And we attempted to communicate with him, and he instead became combative. I tasered him. I used the taser on him. We were in a fight to get him under arrest. After arrest, unfortunately and tragically, he died of heart failure. Some things that came out later on was that he had pre-existing health conditions that I didn't know about, of course, because I was dealing with him for the first time. So I had no idea that the taser was going to contribute to this guy dying. Of course not. One of the people that was standing by was in a public airport, so there were people waiting for their family. One of the guys that was waiting for someone, he videotaped the whole incident. And that happens all the time now, but it was one of the first times that it happened in a Canadian policing case anyways, back in 2007. It wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Bottom line is we knew it was being recorded. We were okay with it, of course, because, we're just doing our jobs. We did what we were trained to do. We gave statements. Hey, this is what happened. It's a tragic result. We did act within our training. Everything that we did was textbooks. So we were cleared by 3 separate police forces. We were cleared by the province's provincial crown, their lawyers. They looked at the incident. They looked at everything. Unfortunately, we went to an inquiry and talked about what we did a couple of years later. And coming out of the inquiry, so basically we testified, said, hey, this is what we did. What we said was placed next to the video. And as you know, in law enforcement, sometimes you don't get every single detail right.
Yeah.
That's an accident, not deliberate, but it was called deliberate. I was charged with perjury, which means lying. I was charged with lying about something that I knew was recorded, something that I'd been cleared of any wrongdoing for. So I had no reason to lie, but I was charged with lying. And I ended up with a judge that decided to convict me. I was convicted of perjury, sentenced to 2.5 years in jail, lost my job, lost my career, lost my freedom. So that's the nutshell version of the story. There's so many layers in there, but that's basically the whole story of my policing career. Unfortunately, I was discharged from the RCMP because I went to jail, and I had to find something else to do with my life.
I have to ask, why was it brought up after you were cleared by 3 different police forces? I'm confused by that. Why was it brought up again?
Yeah, at the time, I think I was really naive as to the possibilities. I kind of just went along with things, and I should have probably done more due diligence and said, okay, what can happen here? Why are we doing this? But the fact that the 3 separate police forces, they were looking at what we did at the airport as a use of force, with use of force lenses, right? So did they use excessive force? Should there be a manslaughter or some kind of, physical related charge, assault with a weapon, that type of thing. And so we were cleared of any wrongdoing in that sense. So knowing that, going into, there was still an inquiry. So it was a public inquiry. So it's basically just not really a criminal court case, but just, I don't even know how to describe it, just a provincial court hearing, investigating the use of, tasers, what happened at the airport. And so not only was I questioned by, lawyers for different parties, but I was questioned by, government lawyers and a lot of different representatives, just basically explaining what I did. And I went into that hearing just thinking, I'm just going to go say what I did, get back to work, right? Same mindset that you have. I've already been cleared. I'm good to go. What I didn't know is that anything I said in that inquiry is testimony in court. And so things that I had said, answers that I gave that may not have been exact matches for what went on in the video or the night of, things that I accidentally made a mistake on. It was all transcribed, detailed, and a special prosecutor was hired and given, I guess, authority to charge us even though we'd been cleared. And that was just kind of the way it worked out. So I didn't even know that could happen, right? You're cleared of any wrongdoing, but then another lawyer is appointed by the province and they basically reopen the case. I guess that's the way you could look at it. And of course, they still didn't find that we did anything wrong physically, as far as against anything criminal from a physical standpoint.
Right.
But they picked apart our statements and said, oh yeah, you must have been deliberately lying about this and this and this, where that's not the case. Hey, they picked apart statements that I gave just less than a couple of hours after I had dealt with the man who died at the airport. And as you know, when you go to a high stress call, your memory is not the best. Studies show now, and now I've kind of researched a little bit more, you need a couple of sleep cycles to give accurate statements as to what happened. Of course, you should see a lawyer. You should do a lot of different things that I didn't do. So those statements were picked apart as part of what I said in the public inquiry, and then they called that perjury. So there was a big, long, circuitous road that ended up with me being charged with something I didn't do.
I understood. And you're right about testimony or talking about a traumatic incident, a high stress incident. You're obviously going to recall details that you otherwise wouldn't have picked up on later on after a few sleep cycles, just like you said. I'm glad you brought up that point. It's those who are not in law enforcement sometimes don't pick up on that. Whenever you did get sentenced for what you said, 2.5 years, did you have to do that full term?
So no, in Canada, I mean, the sentence was 30 months. In Canada, you have to serve a 30-year sentence. So I did 10 months, 6 months in jail, 4 and a halfway house. So 10 months total in the Canadian correctional system. And then I was paroled.
Okay. And
yeah,
you signed up to be a police officer for good reasons and you're a good person. And then all of a sudden this happens in your life. Everything could point towards being bitter, angry, which I'm sure you felt. But when that happened to you and you have this negative attention now and the sentence, did you at any point think, I'm going to give up? I mean, how did you look at how the rest of your life was going to be? I mean, what did you think?
Yeah. And I mean, now keep in mind, this is now years in the making, the right person that I've become today, or the things that I've been able to do. Of course, at the time I was, I wouldn't even say bitter, just disappointed. Disappointed that my career that I really wanted to do, that I really loved, and I planned a lot of different things that I was going to do in the career, and it just came down to now I don't have it anymore, and for not even a justified reason. So yes, of course, there were times I was bitter, and there were times when I didn't want to be around anymore. I mean, in 2010, I was diagnosed with PTSD and depression over not only the incident, but everything that happened, being charged, and all of these things. I mean, even before I was charged, I was diagnosed with PTSD and depression because of the weight of just waiting to see, what's gonna happen here? Am I gonna get back to work? When are these emails that I'm getting, racial emails, death threats, all these things gonna stop? And that I was actually charged and I was convicted. Fortunately, one of the best things I did was start to see a psychologist who helped me unpack some of my the feelings that I was having. And one of the main things that she gave me was perspective. And I think when you have perspective, you can get through a lot of things, because in policing, you probably know that is one of the few, cradle to grave jobs that we have left, right? So it's not like working for a corporation where you go in and you get downsized and that type of thing. Anyways, in Canada, that's not how it is here. I don't know where you are, if the policing works that way, but typically, as long as you do a pretty good job and you're not involved in anything major, you have a career and you can go to different parts of that career. And even if there's one area where you're not doing as well in, you can go to another area. So I had planned out, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So right. I didn't really have any backup plan. And when you don't kind of plan for anything else that you could do, that's when I think depression hits in even heavier. And what my psychologist did was give me the perspective to say, hey, listen, even if you can't do this, what can you do, right? If you go to jail, what can you do there that's positive? If you're not a police officer, what can you do? So the possibility of positivity is what she always instilled in me. And so that's kind of why I ended up now becoming a speaker, becoming a speech coach, getting out and being a wellness coach, and just trying to help people kind of get through their own stuff in life now.
I'm glad you mentioned that you saw the psychologist. Did someone tell you to get treatment, or did you just get to a point where you were like, I can't do this anymore on my own, I have to get some professional help?
It was suggested to me. the force that I was part of, the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they suggested a psychologist to me when I was out in British Columbia, and I saw that psychologist a couple of times, but then I just stopped. When I went through the inquiry of being when I was questioned, and when I came off the stand, that's when I realized there's something just kind of sitting on me that just, it didn't feel right. Something just didn't feel like, I didn't feel like really energetic and gung-ho about life. I just felt very heavy. I don't know if that's the right word to say. And so then I sought out a psychologist, and I had a few names. And I always say to people, because especially in the policing profession, there can be a little bit of a stigma and a hesitation to see a psychologist. And I always say, think of it like trying on a new pair of shoes, right? You're not going to get you may not get the right fit the very first time. You may have to try on a few pairs of shoes until you get the right one. So sometimes people will go to see a psychologist and then they're like, you know what? I don't like this. That's it. I'm done. But when you give yourself the chance to find the right fit, I think it can do a lot of good.
That's a great way of putting it. I never even heard of that. And yes, there is a stigma. A lot of police officers here in the States do not want to get help. Most common reason I hear is either this person can't relate to what I'm going through, or why would I open up to someone, I don't even know. That's kind of the conflict there.
And just to your point there are some psychologists that have been first responders, or at least gone on enough ride-alongs and gone on experienced the job and add that dimension to their job, so that they have way more perspective. So I have a friend, Dr. Stephanie Kahn, who's down in the States, and she was a first responder. Now she's a psychologist. So there are people out there like that have gone through the fire on the first responder side and now are psychologists. So don't give up. Look for someone who maybe has that experience.
Yes, absolutely. I went through treatment through the employee assistance program when I worked for a city department, and the counselor was awful. And now I tell every officer who is seeking treatment, like, do your research on who you're going to go see, and you'll be surprised what's out there. And my next question has to be, you went through this period in your life where you were sentenced to jail. You did that. You had the negative attention on you. I mean, and then you went through the PTSD and the depression. You went through a lot. There's a lot of police officers going through a lot now in America. Some do the right thing and yet are still punished. And then all of a sudden the PTSD from the job or seeing traumatic things, and then depression sets in from worrying about what's going to happen with my life. I know you sought treatment, but what advice do you as a person give police officers who are going through hard times mentally?
Yeah, well, wow, there's a lot there, and
I know
there's a lot of different steps I do give, but I'll just mention one here, and I call it the law of the cause, right? So the cause, the why you do what you do. Always return to that nature of who you are and why you became an officer, why you got into the profession in the first place. For me, I'm not in the profession anymore, so the answer led me to a different path, right? So when I was an officer, I became that to help people, right? That was my why. And by returning to that, I was able to not feel such a sense of loss when I lost a career. So I can still do that. I can still perform that why, that function in another way. So whether that be, now I speak to high school students, I'm an author, I've written a book, and also I speak to not only first responders, but educators and people on the front line about how to build resilience. So that all came from returning to why I became an officer in the first place, and not hanging on to the what, right? And so if you're in the profession and you do want to hang on to the what, add on to your resilience by hanging on to your why, right? So even if people are, saying defund the police and are bad mouthing you, first of all, get around people who are positive, because I think most neighborhoods you drive through, people are still pro-police. It's just the squeakiest people are the loudest, right? So,
Oh yeah.
the most negative people are the ones that you hear. But I guarantee you, almost every neighborhood you go to, at least 7 to 8 out of 10 people still are pro police. It's just they may be the silent majority. So there's that, but also return to why you do what you do and ask yourself, am I going to let other people change my nature, change who I am because they don't like me? Or am I going to still do the job that is a noble calling, a great job to do, and something I really want to um, have pride in doing every day?
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, why we do what we do. And you also said a big word that, well, it's not a long word, but it's a dynamic word. I find that it's very prevalent nowadays, resilience. That's like your specialty. uh, for police officers, what would you say, like, to make resiliency, just to become resilient, just as second nature as responding to a domestic and you have to park a few houses down? Like, it has to be second nature. So what do you as a coach say about becoming a resilient person?
Uh, Once again, a lot of factors to that. Like always say, coming back to your why, and resilience. It's about energies that we have inside of us, right? So you don't have the energy to bounce back from something if you are not taking care of yourself. So there's the physical aspect, which is making sure that, as simple as it sounds, are you eating healthy? Are you staying hydrated? They actually done studies showing that people who exercise have been able to come off of antidepressant medications because the same chemicals that these pills are releasing are released by simply eating right, staying hydrated, as much as you can, getting enough sleep. I know that's hard with shift work sometimes, but adding exercise into your daily routine. And that's not something I'm sure you haven't heard before. Everybody's heard that before, but they don't realize how closely that's tied to resilience. Support network has been shown to be the top predictor of your ability to be resilient. So there's a book that I'm actually reading now. It's called Resilience by Stephen Southwick. And in it, it talks about the support system as well. Like, who is around you? Who do you surround yourself with? And not only supportive people, but supportive people from various backgrounds. And I say that because when I was a police officer, I was put into a different province. All of my friends were cops. All we talked was cop talk.
Right.
And it can make you have a more jaded look at reality because all you're talking about is the stuff that you're dealing with over and over again. You need a wide variety of people. So when I moved back to Ontario and I got back with my regular friends that don't talk about policing, but that are supportive, my network gave me strength. So those are two things that I would say right off the bat. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you can do as well. But those are two things that I would say. Take care of yourself, get your rest, get your recuperation, get your nutrition and exercise, and also ask yourself, who's around me? Who is my support system? And you need at least one person who you can tell anything to.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. I read that, and this was a few years ago, but I really don't think anything's changed, that at least 8 out of 10 police officers were not in the physical shape they needed to be. You did mention taking care of yourself can help. Eating right and exercising can help with resiliency, but there's that voice in my head all the time where I have to fight it. And other people as well. What do you do to push past that initial urge of just not wanting to exercise, not wanting to eat right? I mean, it takes work. So what do you do to stay disciplined with that?
Everything in life that's worthwhile takes work, right? If you're
Yep.
married, it takes work to keep a good marriage. It doesn't survive on leftovers. You have to feed it daily. There's so many things in life, anything worthwhile, like your goal to host this show took work, took research, took everything. And so first off, I would say just anyone who just doesn't want to do it, just suck it up and say, you know what, anything worthwhile is worth working for. Um, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's just the way it is. But what the first thing to do is just focus on your nutrition. If you say, okay, I'm too tired to exercise or whatnot, that's fine. Get your water up, even if you have to go pee more often on shift, and just make better choices, right? The nutritional information is available on websites when you go out on the road, when you're eating at night. There was a restaurant called Boston Pizza that we used to eat at, and we used to eat there on night shifts because they were open till I think 2 o'clock. So lunch, we're going for 1:30 in the morning, and I could get the burger, or I could get the chicken sandwich, right?
Right.
So it's just making simple choices and then having water and making sure you're bringing vegetables to snack on your shift, right? These are things that require no effort. You don't have to fit time in to do a workout if that's not something you want to do right away. But if you just change your nutrition and your hydration, that is going to take you at least part of the distance. And then the other part, we always find time for what we think is important. So once you do that, one good habit tends to make you want to add on other good habits. Same thing with bad habits. One bad habit tends to make you want to add on other bad habits. So if you start the habit of drinking better, more water, if you start the habit of maybe making decisions when you are out to eat, chances are eventually you're going to be like, you know what, I've done these two things. Why don't I try working out once every 2 weeks to start? It'll cascade that way. But if you don't start one good habit, then you'll never get anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really find it amazing how when you do start something, it can lead into great things for your life as long as you just make it a habit. He explained it great. Unfortunately, I'm out of time, but I feel like I could talk to you for 3-4 hours just to pick your brain. Do you have any
thank you for
final
that.
words for those police officers out there who are feeling disgruntled, who are questioning what they're doing? And I know you mentioned why, but do you have any additional last words?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to make the decision whether you really want to stay in the job, but if you loved it up until now and it's just the recent times that are making you think I want to do something else, know that things pass, right? There's a season for everything, and there's a season for this disgruntled nature that we're experiencing right now. And as cliche as it sounds, this too shall pass. And if not you, as the people that are out there protecting us, if not you who are out there at night protecting our streets, then who? Not a lot of people want to do this work. And if you've chosen to do it and you're good at it, and you've been called to do it and you're placed here, people need you. And the people that need you appreciate you, even if you don't always hear it.
Outstanding. Thank you, Kwesi. If someone wants to find out more about you or get coached by you, I mean, where can they find you?
Easy. My website for speaking, coaching, everything, KwesiMillington.com, KWESI Millington.com. You can get chapter 1 of my book, Rise, for free at rockingresilience.com, which is also will forward you to my page. Yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me. And I'm Kwesi Millington on social media.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much. To everyone watching, I will put all of that in the description box below, all those links. And if you did like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel. Kwesi, thanks again.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.